UFC 321 Aspinall vs. Gane is about 1 hour away, or less than an hour away. I'm going to break down the fights. I'm going to start with the early prelim of Azat Maxim versus Mitch Raposo. I'm going to go with Azat Maxim. I watched his fight with Tagir Ulanbekov, who is a top 15 flyweight, and I was pretty impressed by the jump to go to the rankings and fight Tagir Ulanbekov, and he looked nice. I think he even took a round off of Tagir Ulanbekov, and he made it competitive throughout the entire fight. There were moments that I saw good technical ability in both his striking and his defense and offensive wrestling. I didn't see much of his offensive wrestling, but I did see a moment where he almost got taken down by Tagir Ulanbekov, but he quickly was to a scramble or reverse position, and he got to the back of Tagir really fast, explosively. Here's the thing about this fight is that as at Maxim, there's moments where I see him give openings in his striking, and that's where I think Mitch Raposo could capitalize on it, but I don't think that's going to happen. As at Maxim, he looked clean, he fought a good opponent, showed toughness. Despite getting tagged at some points, he always stayed with it, and was always pretty high output. So I'm going to go with Azat Maxim. He's able to go toe-to-toe with Tagir Ulanbekov. Mitch Raposo, honestly, I think I watched back one of his fights. It's hard to find free fights for these guys on YouTube, but, I mean, Mitch Raposo, I'm pretty sure I remembered seeing him look pretty technically good, but I don't think he's at the level of it as at Maxim. I don't think he's at the level of just under the flyweight rankings because of his inability to even get some of his decision wins. I'm pretty sure he lost his last win. I just find it hard. I just find it hard to bet on Mitch Raposo based off of how he's been able to deal with the competition that he's already fought and how close it's been, versus Azat Maxim, who's getting close decisions with Tagir Ulanbekov, who's a really good flyweight. And also, Mitch Raposo has a severe reach disadvantage and a pretty big height disadvantage. I think Azat Maxim's going to make good work of that. I think a lot of the problems that Tagir gave to Azat was because of his also reach and height being very similar, even more than Azat Maxim. So I'm going to go with Azat Maxim. Next up, we got Hami Abdul Wahab versus Chris Barnett. I don't know who to pick for this fight, honestly, because they're both, at the end of the day, just sloppy heavyweights. There's going to be moments where these guys look good technically, like Chris Barnett doing his spinning kicks, or maybe a good one too from Hamdi, but I don't know. I think it's more of a toss-up than these odds say. I think there's some good value on Chris Barnett, especially for his deceivingly explosive ability, and his ability to mix it up with his taekwondo techniques. I feel like he could definitely catch Hamdi with something, but I feel like this is going to be Hamdi using his wrestling, getting Chris Barnett to the ground, smudging him for a good portion. I forget who Chris Barnett fought last, but I know they made a really dumb mistake of rolling to down position and getting ground and pounded by Chris Barnett. I think Chris Barnett just gets away with some things because of the opponents he's facing and his deceiving explosiveness and unique striking. But I do think Hamdi is just going to stick to basics, smudge him a few times, and just slightly edge out the striking. That's just what I think. I would like to see Chris Barnett finish this guy. It'd be cool. So I can also see him do that front flip celebration of his. It's also worth mentioning that Chris Barnett recently not broke his leg, but Chris Barnett tore something in his leg from jumping before a fight. And that's worrying as well. Just even more of a reason that I think Hamdy is going to win this. But I do think the odds are kind of tripping. Next up, we got Nathaniel Wood versus Jose Miguel Delgado. I'm going to go with Jose Miguel Delgado. I just think that he's going to find the opportunity on Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood, also, although he's a good fighter, but I think he leaves the openings that Jose is going to capitalize on. There's not too much else to that besides that. We're limited to what we've seen of Jose, but I think from what we've seen is that he's able to capitalize on the opportunities and those little moments that these fighters give him in the clinch with the knee that he recently got. And he's making quick work of him, getting right back into the cage, and I like that for him. And I think he's going to beat Nathaniel Wood. Next up, we have Walter Walker versus Louis Sutherland. I'm going to go with Walter Walker. Louis Sutherland is, to me, a layup for Walter Walker. Although Louis Sutherland has shown some... it's this thing about heavyweights. They show points of being impressive at times. But I didn't see enough, especially out of Louis Sutherland, to say that he's going to win this fight. Walter Walker, I feel like he's definitely gotten away with some lucky-ass stuff. Kennedy Nzechukwu being very defensively irresponsible during his fight with him, and didn't capitalize on the moment where Walter Walker just rushed forward at him with both of his hands in his face. He could have really chinned Walter Walker right there, if I'm being honest. But Walter Walker is clearly a submission artist who's really good at his leg locks. He could definitely get a very out-of-shape dude like Louis Sutherland, who's sloppy as well, and get him in a sub. I could also see him winning in the striking. Louis Sutherland, I saw some of his fights, and he left himself so open. He's so defensively irresponsible at times that I think Walter could also capitalize on that. I think there's just too much options for Walter Walker to win this fight. But I do think that there is a way for Louis Sutherland, because Walter Walker is also very defensively irresponsible. Walter Walker has good trips, that's also something. Louis Sutherland has very bad balance from what I saw in some of his fights. He's bad at collecting his hips and getting back to the feet with his hips. And I think Walter Walker is going to take advantage of that, definitely. I could even see a TKO ground and pound. But Walter Walker is also training with Bogdan Guskov, who could show him some good looks within the striking and some explosiveness with his lighter man skill. But I'm going with Walter Walker. I think this is a no-brainer for real. Ludovit Klein versus Mateusz Rebecki. I'm going to go with Ludovit Klein. Mainly because Mateusz Rebecki is coming back 2.5 months later after going to a brutal war. And before that, he got into another brutal war. I feel like the whole narrative on Mateusz Rebecki is that he's taken too much damage too soon, and he's getting back way too soon against a very dangerous guy, against Ludovit Klein, who has some power in his hands and good shot selection at times. Although Klein is lower output than Mateusz Rebecki, and I do think Mateusz Rebecki could capitalize on that. There could be some good value from him being an underdog, but he took a ferocious amount of damage over his fights. And there's a truth to what these MMA YouTubers are saying, that you can't take this much damage so quick and get back into it. But there was that narrative with Oliveira against Gamrot. You know, you got slept by Ilia Topuria a few months ago. Not that long ago, and you're going back into it. Originally against Fiziev, but now against Gamrot. I think Oliveira he's different than Mateusz Rebecki. They're not comparable, honestly, because Mateusz Rebecki, although he's shown good times where he's good in striking, I don't know if I see enough to get into another war and win it. Ludwig Klein isn't going to wear the damage that Mytek Beck or Bly wore during their fight. And I think Ludwig Klein's going to capitalize on the damage that Mateusz has taken over time. I think his striking is going to show throughout this fight. Next up, we have Ikram Aliskerov versus Young Park. I think I'm going to go with Ikram Aliskerov. I think that he's just going to masterclass this fight with his striking. I think he's a cleaner striker than Park. I think Park doesn't have the power, the X factor, the ability to control this fight in a certain area and show enough dominance in that area for me to think that he can do that to Ikram Aliskerov. Ikram has shown some times of crispy striking, and I think that's when he's going to catch Young Park. Park has relied a lot of his game on his durability, and although I really like the Iron Turtle, he's cool nickname, cool Selly, but I just don't see it happening for him. Ikram did get chinned by Whitaker, who is he's a much different breed than Young Park, you know, and just the circumstances against the Whitaker fight, I think that was just set up for Ikram to lose. I'm gonna go with Ikram by decision or TKO. Nasrat Haqparast versus Quillian Salkilde. Gonna go with Nasrat Haqparast. Quillian Salkilde looks good at times, but he looks a little chinny to me. The last guy he fought, the guy from Israel, I forget his name, he was a pretty explosive and powerful guy, but Quillian Salkilde got it done. I don't know. He looks good with his striking and his grappling at times, but his defensive irresponsibility, I don't like how he takes a shot at times, especially against his last opponent. I remember looking at that fight and thinking, this guy's pretty fun, but he did smudge him at times, and he looked chinny at times. That's where I think Nasrat is a little bit different. He looked really clean, and he's just a crispy striker, honestly, and I think he's crispy enough to find a moment on Quillian Salkilde, and I think he's actually going to, I'm going to say that he knocks out Quillian Salkilde, and I truly say that based off of how Quillian takes a shot in his last fight. He looked chinny. He looked very chinny. But he always stayed in there throughout that fight, so maybe I'm giving him too much of a hard time with how chinny he is. because he hasn't been put out yet. But Nasrat Haqparast is really good. Like, I saw his last fight, and he looked nice. I think he's going to find the opportunity on Quillan Salkilld, and I think he's probably going to knock him out. Like, Ribovich is a really tough dude, and for Nasrat to put it on him the way he did, I think he can do more against Quillan Salkilld. So yeah, I'm going with Nasrat by KO. On to the main card. Alexander Rakic versus Azamat Murzakanov. I'm going to go with Alexander Rakic. This isn't Brenton Ribeiro. This isn't Alonzo Menifield. This is Alexander Rakic, who went to a decision win with Magomed Ankalaev, made it competitive with him, and was beating Yuri pretty badly until the third round or second. I forget which round Yuri finished him and got the TKO in, but before that TKO and Yuri just being able to drag people into deep waters and finishing them, Alexander Rakic was piecing him up during that entire fight. I was scared for Yuri. Yuri was getting tagged with some heavy stuff. It looked the worst that we've seen Yuri at that point. And it looked like Alexander Rakic was on the way to winning by decision or TKO. Alexander Rakic, I think, is just a different level than what Azamat has faced. And I think he's a different level than what Azamat is prepared for. Because when you go to Brenton Ribeiro and Alexander Rakic, I see two completely different fighters. I think Alexander Rakic, although has shown times to be chinny, I think he's tougher than Brenton Ribeiro. I think he's cleaner in many facets of MMA than Brenton Ribeiro and Alonzo Menifield. And I don't think Azamat Murzakanov is going to be able to get him out of there. I think Alexander Rakic is really clean with his kicks, his strikes. And I think he's going to... I think Alexander Rakic is going to TKO or KO Azamat Murzakanov. That's what I think. I don't think Azamat's ready for this. But there is opportunity for him. Moving on. Alexander Volkov versus Jailton Almeida. I feel so bad for Volkov, man. I feel so bad for Volkov. Gets robbed in the Gane fight, and now has to face Jailton Almeida while Gane fights for the title. But I'm gonna go with Alexander Volkov. I feel like Jailton Almeida has the ability to explosively take down Volkov and make me a very sad guy, because he can explosively and athletically take down heavyweights and get subs and ground and pound off enough to get finishes. But what I have a tough time deciding with this fight is, will Alexander Volkov have the takedown defense and the balance to stay on his feet? Because if he does, he wins this. Jailton Almeida will not be able to hang with Alexander Volkov in terms of the striking. Alexander Volkov has been improving at a rapid pace. I don't know why I said a rapid pace. He's been improving, though, very, very well. He beat Gane in the striking and wrestling. I think he's been doing really good. And I think his kicks and hands are just going to be too much for Jailton Almeida. I think he's going to win this. I don't know how. Maybe by decision But I don't see Jailton winning on the feet at all. And I don't see enough flaws on Volkov's ground game to think that Jailton wins. Tom Aspinall straight arm locked him, but bro, with someone like Jailton Almeida, you gotta think that it's very much possible that he could sub Volkov. But I think that Volkov is just going to be a little bit too good at managing his distance and keeping it on the feet for a majority of it. And if he does get to the ground, I don't think Jailton Almeida is going to be able to finish him. He wasn't able to finish Sergey Spivak with the sub. He had a TKO him, which can also happen. But I see more from Volkov than I do Sergey Spivak. I see a lot more, honestly. I think there is a pretty big jump between Volkov and Sergey Spivak, I'm gonna be honest. Especially at this stage where Volkov is looking good against Gane. I think he's going to outstrike Jailton Almeida, keep it on the feet for the most part, and win a decision. Alright, so the feature fight, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista. I'm going to go with Umar. I do think these odds are crazy. If I were a betting man, throw a few dollars on Mario Bautista. He looks really good at times. He's crispy with striking. He's no slouch in he's no slouch in really any facet of the game. But I think the difference maker is that Umar is not Patchy Mix. He's not like a 38 Jose Aldo. I think that Mario Bautista is going to have a night and day difference between Umar and Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix looked like he had bricks on his feet, just glued to the canvas. And he was just like a punching bag for Mario Bautista. I don't rate the Patchy Mix win at all, which is getting him to this fight. Patchy Mix, at this point, after watching both of his fights in the UFC, I don't think he should have even gone to the UFC. I don't rate Patchy Mix at all. With how terrible his movement is, I don't know how he made it to the level of, this level of game. I don't know how he found himself in the position to fight Mario Bautista with just the hype. And Jose Aldo was giving him problems at times before he was smudging him against the cage. I think their striking are very comparable in level, so I don't think that one is going to excel in the striking completely over the other. But I do think Umar will have the advantage in terms of wrestling. Growing up with Khabib, Islam, been trained by Abdul Manapovich himself, beating Corey Sandhagen, who he himself is a great striker and technically on the ground really good, bar the Aljo performance. But Aljo's really good. I'm worried with the fact that Merab was able to sting him at times and just completely make him look like a fool. But that's Merab, who's improving his striking and the current bantamweight GOAT shooting for, in general, MMA GOAT. Umar has crispy striking, so does Mario Bautista. I do think there are times where Umar has gotten away with defensive irresponsibility. But I think he's going to have the slight advantage on the ground game, which will be the difference maker in this. I think their striking is going to be fun. I think it's going to be competitive, but I think Umar is going to have an edge and a lead in the ground game. Mario Batista is really good though. I think Mario Batista is good, but I don't think his performance against Patchy Mix was able to justify why he should win this fight. I think if you're versing Patchy Mix at this stage, you should be able to finish him, especially if you're in the top 10, top 5 bantamweights. You should finish Patchy Mix when he's just standing there. You know, when you have someone that's very, very plotty and doesn't move a lot, like, tee off on him, which he did, but he didn't have enough pop to significantly concuss Patchy in the way that he finishes him. And I don't think that's going to fly with Umar. I think Umar is going to be way more fast, way more difficult and tricky to deal with his movement compared to Patchy Mix. So, yeah, I'm going with Umar. I could see it by sub. I could see it by rear naked choke. And I could see it by decision. Next up, to the main event. Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane. I'm gonna go with... Shit. No, why am I trying to act like this is tough? I'm going with Tom Aspinall by finish. I don't know if it's going to be a sub. I don't know if it's going to be a KO, TKO. I just know Tom Aspinall is going to finish Ciryl Gane. And I see all these people trying to give Gane some sort of path to win this. And I'll tell you the path, the only path that Gane really has to win this fight. But let me just say that people try to find these tiny holes in Tom Aspinall's game. They try to poke him. People try to find holes in Tom Aspinall's game, and throughout his fights, you can only really point out the fact that at times he is defensively irresponsible. In the very short amount of time that his fights have been collectively, you've seen plenty of times where Tom gets hit with something flush and he still pulls it off, gets the KO, gets the sub. And they'll point out those times and moments that even though his fights are really short, in those short times he's shown defensive irresponsibility. But I don't think Gane, despite being hyped as such a good striker and clean fighter, he's the LeBron James of MMA, perfect build, perfect athleticism. He's not all of that. You go back to the Volkov fight, he got outstruck by Volkov pretty clearly. He got out-wrestled by Volkov pretty clearly. Yet, they gave him the decision win. Tom, on the other hand, has knocked out, TKO'd, or subbed every single one of his opponents, including Volkov, who he straight arm-locked and dominated. The path for Gane to win this, and the only thing that people are able to say, is that he's a little bit different in terms of his movement, his agility, and his shot selection, apart from Tom's other opponents. Tom is such a deadly finisher, and I think because you're able to get dropped by Tai Tuivasa, because Tai Tuivasa is giving you several different problems, I think Tom Aspinall cleans your shit. Like, I know there's going to be times in fighters' careers that they have really bad moments where it's something like getting chopped by Tai Tuivasa, who, even though he's been on a downward slide and he's very much out of shape, not that agile, he was explosive, and he was able to find shots pretty well. But Gane has shown several times that he is not as good as people hype him up to be, as this idea of Gane that we have. And the Volkov fight looked bad, genuinely bad. Tai Tuivasa fight looked genuinely bad. Sergey Spivak fight. It's Sergey Spivak. He's bad. Sergey Spivak is not good. He might be in the rankings, but so was almost the guy that beat Curtis Blades. I remember like an unranked heavyweight fought Curtis Blades and like almost won that. And like that's someone that's making his UFC debut and almost beat someone in like the top 10. That's unbelievable. But I think it speaks to the gap that there might be in the top of the heavyweight rankings. And I think Tom is the peak of that mountain. He is more explosive, more fast, better with the shot selection than any other opponent that Ciryl Gane has faced in both striking and wrestling. Like, people will talk a lot about Tom Aspinall's striking and how he's knocking out Sergey Pavlovich and Curtis Blades, but it's also worth mentioning that he just has a great blast double leg that he can get to someone's hips and just take them down. Just push right through them to the ground. I could see that happening very quickly, them getting back on the feet. Once when they break from the clinch, Tom hits him with a clean right, sends him down, and we get a TKO. Yeah, there's just no good reason, really, to pick Gane. People that are picking Gane are just trying to be different, don't like Tom, are John Jones fans, or something else. Because there's no reasonable excuse to say that someone who has brutally finished and dominated every single one of his opponents with a few holes is going to be beaten by someone who has scraped by, robbed, striking, wrestling to get to a title fight. Like, Gane just recently lost his last fight, which is why it would be even worse. It would be the worst outcome ever if Gane somehow does something throughout this. Ciryl Gane shouldn't even be in this position. He has been outstruck, out-wrestled, and he's gotten clipped by people that are so much less explosive and agile than Tom Aspinall. There's a reason why John Jones ducked this guy, and I think we're going to see that throughout this fight. Tom, please get it done and keep the MMA universe stable, because I don't know what will happen if through this fight we get some instability in the MMA world. I'm going to have a meltdown like the MMA guru. I'm going to be so mad, confused, pissed off if Gane were to win this. But I don't see that happening. Gane, although has looked really clean at times, good finishes at times, but if you watch his fights, if you actually watch it instead of being brainwashed by some of the finishes and the highlight tapes you see, or say he fought John Jones, he's really good, he's gonna finish Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall's not that good. Bro, I cannot wait for this fight. And if I see Tom Aspinall put Cyril Gane out cold, my God, what a place in the MMA world will be. Where we have Yuri, Pereira, and Tom winning. No Jones? What a world that would be. But, yeah, I'm going with Tom by finish. Easy. Easy work. Cyril, you're terrible. You robbed Volkov. Volkov should be fighting. And that's not even just why I'm picking him. Like I already explained, Tom Aspinall has faced... He's faced adversity. He has a chin on him, despite getting caught at times. He's just dominated in so much facets of the game that I don't see Cyril Gane winning this. So yeah, I'll be watching UFC 321 in probably about a few minutes. So we'll see how my predictions go. One of the fights got canceled for medical reasons. But yeah, Tom, make things right.